Okay, back to the dinim of Pidyon Haben. So yesterday we were learning like this. A kohen who does averis that are especially pertaining to kohanim. In other words, either he goes to cemeteries or he marries women that are explicitly designated that a kohen is not allowed to marry. So then you're not allowed to do Pidyon Haben with that person because he's not a kosher kohen anymore. Now the same thing applies, this is where we left off. If somebody is a kohen that is an idol worshiper, or he openly desecrates Shabbos, not like we explained today, that's rare. So also, he's not a kosher kohen, and you can't do a Pidyon Haben with him. And if you did, you have to go and do it again with another kosher kohen. Now, what happens if a kohen, God forbid, is an onen? Now, onen is a person from the time a relative passes away until the burial. They're called an onen. So technically, they're parted from doing all mitzvahs. So what happens if a kohen is an onen? Okay, somebody already booked him to do a Pidyon Haben. And his father and mother passed away, and he's an onen. So if there's another kohen, you obviously have to do it with another kohen. If there's only him, you could do a Pidyon Haben with that kohen because there's nobody else, but he shouldn't drink the wine. Normally the kohen makes a bracha, we'll get there later, in the middle of the meal the kohen makes a bracha on the wine. And Einen is not allowed to drink wine. During Shiva, Ashkenazim hold you allowed to have meat and wine. Some Sfardim do, some Sfardim don't. But Onen means from the time of death until the funeral, you're not allowed to have meat, you're not allowed to have wine. So therefore, somebody else would have to make the bracha, Beri Piagafen, because he couldn't do it himself. If a kohen is an ovel, meaning it's already after the funeral, so then some people say even in the first 3 days of mourning, I'm going to elaborate on that now, but he could, some people say he can't, and so on. Okay, what happens if a kohen is a mamzer? Now it's a bit difficult to figure out how could a kohen be a mamzer that he's still a kohen. Right? Because if his father was illegitimate, yeah, but again, the din of a kohen that becomes disqualified as a kohen is basically when he marries a woman who's designated sin as a kohen. But if it's somebody who's forbidden for everybody, exclusion of a non-Jewish girl, but otherwise, so technically, let's say a kohen had Eishes Ish. Okay, let's say a kohen had relation with an Eishes Ish. They had a son. The son's a mamzer, but he's a kohen technically. So because his father didn't live with a divorcee or somebody that a kohen particularly would. So nevertheless, you don't do a Pidyon Haben with him, and if you did, you have to do it by somebody else again. Now, here's another interesting thing. If you remember, we learned when we were learning about Bris Milah, that the Ramah brings down that you don't have the same sandik by both kids in the same family. If you honored somebody with the sandik by one kid, you don't honor him the second time to be a sandik. The exception of that is parents, grandparents, rabbonim, things like that. But generally speaking, you don't make a sandik twice the same person. Now, why is that? Why is that? Because the Shach brings down, because being a sandik, it says in Svardim, is like the Kohen bringing the Ketores every day. Not in Yom Kippur. Every day, the Kohen would bring the Ketores, like we read in davening. And the din was, they never had the same Kohen do it twice. Why not? Because bringing Ketores was a segula to get rich, to become wealthy. So they wanted to share the goods between as many kohenim as possible, not to have the same kohen, always be the one getting the segula, so to speak, the good luck thing to get rich. So some people want to say the same thing as the Pidyon Haben. So you don't use, some people say you don't use the same kohen. Let's say, I'll give you an example. A guy married 2 wives in the yesteryears, and he had a b'chor from each kid. So now he has to do 2 Pidyon Habens, one for kid A, one for kid B, because each one's a separate b'chor from the mother. So then it says you don't do the same Pidyon at Ben. Some people say you're allowed. Say you don't use the same kohen, and some people say you're allowed to because it's an uncommon situation that a guy has two wives and both of them gave birth to the firstborn, that he's going to be using the same kohen. So
using the same kohen is like also the kohen that is supposed to get rich by being the kohen that's receiving money.
no, it said the Torah was a school for a kohen to have ashirus.
I'm saying you said that the Ramah compares that to a son.
Yeah.
The same, you're saying it's also compared, or it's using the same kohen?
No, that's what I'm saying. So some people compare it to the same kind of opinion of Ben, so you shouldn't do it. Other people say, no, Sandik is one thing and this is a different thing. Because Sandik, we're afraid, if you have 10 kids, you're going to use the same guy 10 times. So that's not nice. Because then if he has a chazaka, if he did 3 times, he'll demand it. Here, it's not in the common situation. The guy has 2 wives. Well, not today. I mean, those years even. The guy's going to have 2 wives and 10 Pidyon Bens. Another din is like this. A kohen shouldn't come to the father and say, hey, use me as a kohen. He's not supposed to do that. Not only that, he shouldn't go to the relatives of the baby's father and say, tell your brother-in-law, brother or sister, whatever, to use me. And that's the minig, that you don't do it.
Why would he want it?
What?
Is it special segula?
To be a big, no, listen, he wants to, because they say you don't grab, even at the time of the Matnas Kahuna, it was wrong, the Gemara says it was wrong for a kohen to go into somebody's house and grab it. I'll give you an example. A guy separated Truma, right? Don't forget, I just saw years ago it was an agricultural country, everybody was in agriculture, right? So everybody had Truma to give to the kohen. Now, Truma halachically belongs to the kohen. Okay, now, let's say for argument's sake, how much Truma did somebody supposed to give? So it says, if you're a nice guy, 1 out of 40. Medium guy, 1 out of 50. A mean guy, 1 out of 60. Okay? So that's an average guy. A guy had 100 bushels. The land produced 100 bushels of wheat. So now he has to give truma to the kohen. So he has to give 2 bushels, actually belong to the kohen, right? Now, what happens if a kohen comes to your house and grabs them? He says, listen, it's not yours anyway. You have to give it to kohen. I got it. So there's an argument in the Gemara if Teves Hano is Mammon or not, which means as follows. The owner of the field, granted he has to give it to the kohen, to a kohen, but the Torah gives him the right to give it to the kohen of his choice. Okay? And that is a certain schus that a father has, that an owner of the farm has, that he can give it to a certain kohen. Granted, it's not his, because it belongs to the kohen, but he has a right. It's called a tovas hano. He has a benefit to give it. Why? Maybe he wants to be friends with this kohen. Maybe he wants to make a shidduch with this kohen. Who knows? So he has the right to give it. So now a kohen comes along and grabs it away. So he's not a ganef because it doesn't belong to the owner, it belongs to a kohen. So nevertheless, there's an argument in the Gemara if teves hano is called money or not. Is it called a damage that you can demand payment for? So there's 2 opinions. If the worst comes to worst, let's say the schus of giving it away is $5. Let's say. But the 2 bushels might be worth $100. You know? So if Teves Hano is money, so the kohen has to give him $5. If you hold it's not money, he doesn't have to give him anything. But nevertheless, the Gemara says you're not allowed to do it. It's wrong. Yeah, granted, if you grab the money, it belongs to you, but it's not the right thing to do. So the same thing they bring down, a person shouldn't go, even though they say, by Pidyon Haben is similar to all the other Kohanim gifts, right? The 20 Kohanim were given 24 gifts. One of them was Pidyon Haben. So just like the Gemara says, by the other ones, you shouldn't go grab it. So the same thing, they want to compare Pidyon Haben to that like everything else. You don't grab it. You give it to him, he takes it, otherwise not. You're not allowed to, a kohen is based on the same din, you're not allowed to, a kohen can't pay the father to use him as a kohen. Let's say you have to give 101 grams of silver, yeah? So let's say 101 grams of silver, I don't know what it's worth today. But let's say it's worth $100, yeah? Can a kohen come to a father and say, here's $10, use me. So the father saves $10, the kohen gets $90, so you're not allowed to do that either. And another person cannot give money to the father that they should use him as a kohen. Okay, that's as far as that goes. Now there's an interesting discussion we'll just start today.
Any kickback?
Huh?
In other words,
No kickbacks. No kohen kickbacks.
I've heard people, I didn't do the Pidyon event, but I've heard people get to the Pidyon event and they ask the kohen, give me those coins and I'll give you $1. Because they have to use special silver coins, right?
Yeah, what they do is usually they buy him from the kohen.
So is that perfectly fine?
The kohen has coins.
Does he have to sell them?
That's either worth $100.
We buy it before
Yeah, before the Pidyon event.
I got my own.
No.
I got my own set of coins I give to the kohen. Could I come to the kohen and say,
No. Those coins belong to the kohen. Those coins belong to the kohen. A lot of kohenim give it back anyway, but they don't have to give it back. You give the $5 silver to a kohen, it's the kohen's money. You can't say give it back, or I'll buy it from you for $100. If the kohen says yes, fine. If the kohen says no, it's no. I mean, what?
should people be accepting it back when the kohen comes back?
If they want to, they could. Some kohenim give it back, some don't. Okay, so now let's discuss like this. In the time of the Bais Hamikdash, who is a kohen was a very important thing, because they had to eat truma, they had to work in the Bais Hamikdash. Okay, I mean, a non-kohen who eats truma is chayiv misa. Mitzvah b'dei Shema. Hashem kills the person if a non-kohen, even a Levi, but a non-kohen eats truma, they chayiv misa.
Do they sell the excess?
No, not truma.
Only the Kohanim with their excess.
They could sell it to only kohanim.
But other Kohanim must also say shit. So what did they do?
So what they did was, well, sometimes they could sell the truma to Yisrael, so then when they take the money, the truma is not truma anymore. But as truma, you can't, you could redeem truma, in other words. But you can't, so in the time of the Bais Hamikdash, we mentioned that there was a Bais Din in the Bais Hamikdash. Someplace it says there were a Bais Din of Kohanim. They would actually weed through the Kohanim. And it says like this, when Ezra came back to build the second Bais Hamikdash from Bavel, Ezra made a talk, like they say. He fixed up the lineage of the Jewish people. He fixed it up, organized it, who's a Jew, who's not a Jew, who's a Kohen, who's a Levi, Israel. In fact, the Gemara says those people were more known who they were because Ezra went through the whole Klal Yisrael in Bavel that were going up. So Ezra made a talk. But in those days, somebody that was a chazaka, being a Kohen, they had to be hesitant. In other words, like this, if somebody those days would come to shul and say, I'm a Kohen. Now, if you give him Kohen as an aliyah, people will think, oh, he's authentic Kohen. I'll give him truma. But in order to eat truma, you need to have a chazaka. You have to have a chazaka that the person's a taka Kohen. Otherwise, you can't give him truma if he's not a Kohen. Right? So therefore, in the times of it's a whole harichas about, in the time of the Bais Hamikdash, they actually had established people who were a Kohen, who were not Kohen, who was called Kohen Miyuchas, not a Kohen Miyuchas. And that is not only that, because in the time of the Bais Hamikdash, don't forget, when you separate challah today, right, a woman bakes challah or bread, she separates challah. What do you do with it today? You burn it. Why do you burn it? Really, it belongs to the Kohen. You're supposed to give challah to this one of the gifts for the Kohen. Why didn't you give it to a Kohen? So the answer is maybe he's not a kohen, and then if he's not a lited challah. So what you do today, there's two aspects of separating all these things, even Pidyon Haben and all this. Number one, in order for you to eat the bread, you have to separate challah. That's part one. Part two, it's a gift given to the kohen. So because we don't know for sure who's a kohen, we can't give it to a person who thinks he's a kohen, because maybe he's not. So therefore you have to separate it and burn it, that you did, to separate the challah, then you know you did the mitzvah. Then you burn it, because non-Yisrael is not allowed to eat it, so you burn it. Okay, to be continued.